This presentation is brought to you by Experts for Entrepreneurs. Today's webinar is hosted by Tom Ruich of MarketVolt. The subject is how to harness the power of email marketing to grow your business in the 21st century.
Okay, here we go. Thank you all for being here this morning. My name is Tom Ruich, and I run MarketVolt, an interactive marketing firm, and we're going to spend a few minutes talking about email marketing, how to harness the power of email marketing to grow your business in the 21st century. As I noted before, if you have any questions, you can type them into the chat box. You can raise your hand by clicking the little raise your hand icon, and I will be able to respond to questions. And when we're finished at the end, I'll take some time for some questions. But feel free to chime in with questions via the chat box during the presentation. So here we go, how to harness the power of email marketing to grow your business in the 21st century. That's my contact information. If you have follow-up questions, if you want to contact me for any reason, feel free to email me. Feel free to call me directly. That number will ring directly at my desk. I'll give you a moment to note that down. And we'll move on. So here's the plan for what we're going to cover today. We're going to talk a little bit about what is your job as a marketer, and more precisely as an interactive marketer. What is it that you need to do? We're also going to talk about the importance of planning. That's one of the things that so many businesses neglect to do when planning an email marketing or when putting together an email marketing program. They leave the planning part out, and it's just so much harder without planning. We'll talk about that in more detail in a moment. Then we'll talk about some tips for list building. We'll talk about creating compelling content. We'll talk about the importance of being interactive in your email marketing program. And we'll talk about how to conduct targeted follow-up. The real advantage of good email marketing is conducting good targeted follow-up. We'll discuss what that's all about. 7, email marketing should not occur in a silo. It's not as if it's a program that you do separately from the other things that you do. Email marketing should be an integrated part of a whole marketing program that includes other media. We'll talk about that idea in a little more detail later. We'll talk about a concept of hunting versus gathering and what we mean by that. And then we'll have some time, as I noted before, with Q&A. So let's jump right in and discuss this idea of what is your job. What business are you in? Our friend Homer seems a little bit confused, doesn't quite know what he's doing with his job, but here's the key thing to keep in mind. This is not your job. You are not simply in the business of selling stuff and counting the money. You are in the business of solving problems for clients, providing solutions for clients. Whatever business you're in, whether it's B2C, whether it's B2B, you are helping people get to that summit. And even if it's a B2C retail business like a record store, what you're helping your clients achieve is enjoyment of music, fulfillment of a desire to enjoy music more. If you sell telecommunications equipment, your job is to help your clients conduct business more effectively and more efficiently using the equipment and the services that you sell. So the more that you look at your job as being that guide on the mountaintop who's helping somebody get somewhere that they want to be, the better off you're going to be in putting together a communications program that's effective, that provides value, and that gets people to trust and value you and the relationship that you've established so that ultimately the sales will follow. Now let's talk about planning. As I noted before, so many businesses fail or struggle in their email marketing programs because they don't go into it with a plan. They understand the notion that I want to send a monthly newsletter, something like that, and then they get around to the first of the month and they think, oh no, what am I going to write this month? And they struggle and they struggle and they struggle. And because it's a struggle, they never can get into that comfortable rhythm of creating good content, of creating an effective program. So you have to develop an effective email marketing plan. And a few ideas and a few concepts for how to go about doing that that we'll get to in a moment in terms of creating compelling content. But the key thing that you need to do in terms of creating a plan is you have to commit to a regular publication strategy. You have to commit some time up front when you first start your email marketing campaign to define the general format for what you're going to produce. So if you're going to have a monthly newsletter, what is the format going to be? Is it going to be 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 articles? Is it going to link to content that you have on your blog? Are you going to pull content from just your own brain, or are you going to use other coworkers or outside resources to produce the content? Simply developing a plan in advance of what you're going to produce, when you're going to produce it, how you're going to produce it is essential. And that includes what you do in addition to the regular newsletters. Are you going to do more targeted pitches in between? The answer should be yes, and we'll talk about that in more detail in a moment. But if you don't start with a plan, then it's going to be extremely, extremely difficult. Let's talk a little bit about building your email list. We get this question all the time. How do I build the list? So a few basic ideas. You have to have a newsletter sign-up form on your website. Your website's primary purpose, or at least one of the key reasons that you should have a website, is to acquire leads. If people come to your website and they don't have a way to raise their hands and sign up for your email list, you're missing an opportunity to connect with them. A way to do that, to connect with them and to get them to raise their hand, is to offer a free report, to offer some sort of content. If you go to the MarketVolt website or the MarketVolt blog, I'll bring that up as an example, blog.marketvolt.com. This is the MarketVolt blog, and right here at the very top of the blog, we offer a free report, 10 secrets to write email subject lines that sell. And the idea here is that people will come to this form, enter their first name, their last name, their email address, and in so doing, they're raising their hand to join our email list. Somebody who's going to fill out that form is somebody who is interested in conducting email marketing. They wouldn't be interested in how to write subject lines to sell if they weren't interested in doing some sort of email marketing. And by getting that free report, they're raising their hand, telling me that they're interested in things that we have to say, and then giving me an opportunity to communicate with them further. So offering some sort of free report, some sort of content that would be of interest to your audience is a great way to build your list. You want to link to your sign-up from all sorts of places. This goes back to that point I was making before about integrated email marketing. It doesn't happen in a silo. So in your email signature, in Outlook or Gmail or wherever you send your emails, go ahead and put a link to the sign-up form on your email page, and send anybody who gets an email to that. You'll be surprised how many people get to your sign-up page from that signature at the bottom of your email. Send readers to sign up in all of your print and broadcast pieces. When we talk generally about how to build your email list, the principle that we emphasize is just ask. And by just ask, we mean anywhere and everywhere that you have interaction with your prospective clients, ask. And so that goes for print pieces, that goes for direct mail, anything where you are connecting with people who might be interested. go ahead and direct them to the place where they can sign up. That includes, number 5, your on-hold audio. More and more businesses now have telephone systems where they can control the on-hold audio. People call in, rings through, press this for this department, that for that department. Even solopreneurs can now put in very inexpensive telephone systems that have on-hold audio. While somebody's waiting on hold, instead of just playing some music, why don't you tell them to go to such and such page to sign up for your email newsletter or to get a free report? Again, you won't get tons of people that way, but a handful who might otherwise not have signed up will join your mailing list. Using social media to promote email is one of the key reasons to have a good social media program. Always promote your email list on Facebook, on LinkedIn, on Twitter. Give people an opportunity to do it, to sign up when they visit your Facebook page or when they are following you on Twitter. And then teleprospecting. We are connecting more and more with businesses that are using teleprospecting not just to close a sale, in fact, less to close a sale than to simply build a list. So we're working with teleprospecting firms who will reach out to a list and simply get permission from the people they call to get an email address and to put those people on an email list. And then they use email to begin to move those people a little bit further through the sales funnel. So here again is that idea of not siloing and integrating your program, that what we might consider 20th century older styles of marketing, teleprospecting, direct mail, so on and so forth. Those can often be great ways to connect with cold leads, and when you connect with them, you don't have to think in terms of closing the sale right then and there. You can think in terms of connecting with the cold lead so that you can acquire them, put them onto your mailing list, and then work with them through email to move them from cold lead, the warmer prospect, to customer. Compelling content. Let's talk. We talked a little bit about this when I talked about planning, but in order to produce compelling content on an ongoing basis, this plan we find to be foolproof. No matter what business you're in, again, B2C, B2B, big business, small business, if you take this approach that we outline here, you will have a great set of content that you can produce on an ongoing basis that's compelling, that gives people a reason to open your emails, and that ultimately strengthens the bond between you and your readers. Let me walk through this list a little bit. The first thing is to outline your business goals. If you don't have a clear sense of why you're sending the emails, why you're orchestrating this marketing program, what goals you want to achieve, and how you measure success, then you need to step back and define that. If you don't have your goals, how can you figure out what to do? How can you understand where the finish line may be? And when I talk about goals in this sense, I'm not talking about broad, vague goals like grow the business or increase profits. I'm talking about more specific goals. I want to increase sales of product or service X by a certain percentage point. Measurable, specific goals. And in most cases in your business, you're going to have multiple goals that you may be pursuing. Write them down. Ask yourself, is this a goal that is measurable? Is this a goal that's specific? And then if the answer is yes, you can move on to the next steps. The next step is for each specific goal. I want to increase sales of product or service X. Imagine who your ideal client is for that product or service. Who is it that you're trying to reach? There are all sorts of different exercises for achieving this and for defining that ideal client in your mind. But one of the exercises that I like best is to imagine that you are writing a letter to a friend, a relative, a long-lost brother, your aunt, your college roommate, whatever it may be, where you're describing to that person in very personal terms this cool product or service that you've discovered, and you're describing that product or service to that person. And when you write that letter, what happens is, it sounds a little cheesy, I know, but it is an exercise that works for a lot of people. What happens is you begin to hit the trigger points about that product or service, and you begin to get excited about the product or service because you're connecting or imagining that you're connecting with somebody who with whom you have a personal connection. And that helps you understand that ideal client and what that ideal client would like or not like about the product or service that you're describing. The third thing that you should do is take out a piece of paper, and on that piece of paper draw a grid. And on that grid you should have columns with the following headings: FAQ, standing for frequently asked questions, SAQ, should ask questions, and objections. So 3 columns, and then at least 12 rows. And what you're going to do is jot down in each column a frequently asked question in the FAQ column. So you're going to do 12 of those. You're going to do 12 SAQs, not the questions that you hear most frequently from prospects or clients about your business, but the ones that you don't hear, but you know they probably ought to be asking those questions. And then finally, the objections. If you've been in business and you've been selling your products and services, this should be a pretty easy exercise. What happens often is that when you first go through this exercise, writing down those FAQs or SAQs, you may come up with 5 or 6 in the first time that you go through it. Take a deep breath and go again. You should be able to come up with at least 12. You really should be able to come up with at least 20. 20 frequently asked questions, should ask questions, and common objections that you get when you're trying to promote or sell the product or service in question. And you don't have to write a long paragraph in response to each, but just what is the question and maybe a quick note or two about the answer. Write all of that down, and when you're done, you're going to have at least 12 rows, 3 columns, and make a copy of that, tack it up to the bulletin board near your computer, and just having that up on the board is now a grid from which you can select a variety of topics that you can write about in your ongoing newsletters, because the newsletters that you produce, the content that you send via email, has to answer the questions that your prospects are asking, the questions that your prospects should ask, and should also address the objections that they may have. What will happen after you've nailed those and after you've thought about those and have that grid in front of you, something that you look at on an ongoing basis, as you begin to listen to the news or to read industry trade journals or to just experience life, you're going to come up with stories and hooks and connections to industry trends that can be the hooks on which you hang the hat, the topics that allow you to frame the answers to those questions. I'll give you an example. One of the frequently asked questions that I get all the time when it comes to email or interactive marketing in general is video. Should I use video, or how important is it to use video in my interactive marketing? I just have it in my head that that's one of the questions that I ought to answer, and it's one of the topics that constantly ought to be addressed in the content that I produce. Well, this is now some time ago that this happened, but in an off moment I was at my son is a guitar player, and I went to a summer camp where it was a rock school summer camp where he goes and learns guitar, and he's in a band, and then they do a performance. And I had bought a new iPhone a week or two before the performance, and when I went to this performance, I videoed the performance on my iPhone. And without having to return to my office, I clicked the button that sent the video of this band from my iPhone to my YouTube account. And before I even left the building where they had performed, literally minutes after they had performed, I was able to log on to YouTube on the computer, show this to the band members and the parents in the room, and I was the hero. It was the coolest thing ever. And as I drove home from that concert, actually as I drove back to the office from that concert, it occurred to me that I had a great story to share with my readers about the power of video. And my ability to connect that experience that I just had, completely separate from work, but my ability to connect that personal experience to my content creation business was there because I already had outlined in my mind that the question of how do I use video, tell me about the power of video, was sort of locked in my head. It was already something that I had outlined. I already knew that video was something I wanted to discuss with my audience. So when something powerful and interesting and demonstrative about the power of video happened to me in my personal life, I realized I had a hook that I could write about in my blog or in my email newsletter. You'll be very surprised at how easy it is, pardon me, you'll be very surprised at how easy it is for you to begin to gather those stories and notice the thing that you heard on the radio as being connected to something that you ought to write, or that news story that you see in the trade journal as prompting you to write something. If you take step 3, which is to list out those frequently asked questions, should ask questions, and objections. That provides the basis for what you ought to write. Then your eyes and ears will be open to connect the things that you're seeing, hearing, and doing to the stories that you can tell in your email. The 5th thing that you need to do to create compelling content is to gather testimonials. And again, just ask. Just ask your clients when they first do business with you, when you talk to them and have a positive interaction with them. Ask them whether you can get them to share a story, whether you can use their name, whether you can use their picture. And one of the great things that you can do with testimonials is ask them to answer specific objections that you already have listed out. For example, if cost is an objection that you hear. I like you, but you're a little more expensive than I can afford. Ask one of your happy clients to address that objection. Hey, Bill, I remember that when we were first talking to you about doing business, you raised the objection about cost, but now you're doing business with us. Would it be okay if you gave me a testimonial that addresses that point? Bill will be happy to do so, and he will say something to the effect of, when I first considered doing business with Tom, I was a little bit worried that it was outside of my budget, but now I recognize that it's worth every penny. Having testimonials answer your objections provides great content for you and provides powerful and more compelling and believable answers to those objections than if you just address them yourself in your own sales copy. So make a note of those steps: outlining your goals, imagining your ideal client, listing frequently asked questions, should ask questions, and objections, and so forth. And if you do those things, when it comes time for you to plan your campaign and generate content, that won't be nearly as high a hurdle as it is for people who don't take these steps. 21st century marketing. One of the great differences between the kind of marketing we do today and the kind of marketing that we were doing just 5, 6, certainly 10 years ago is it's no longer simply about pushing stuff at people that they read. It's about having conversations and building relationships and interacting with friends and followers and people who are with whom you are having a conversation. You have to think of your content as being part of a dynamic conversation. In so doing, there are all sorts of things that you can do with your email that will help you accomplish this. So the first thing is that you can publish a poll. If you're using a content management system, tool like WordPress or other content management systems, putting a poll into your website is very, very easy. Or using the survey tool in your email marketing software where you ask just a simple question, what do you think? And publishing the poll is a very, very effective tool. People respond, and then people are going to be interested to hear what the poll results are, which you could publish in the next email that comes out. Even if you don't have a tool such as a little survey engine or the ability to publish a poll on your website, you could simply at the end of a post where you, or excuse me, at the end of an article that you put in a newsletter, write the words, what do you think? And even just have an email link where you could say to people, just tell me what you think, click here and email me. And you have to keep the implied promise that if you send me information about what you think, I'll respond back to you and keep that conversation going. But this engagement, this invitation to interact is just a way of tightening that connection between you and your audience even more. And even those who don't respond directly will appreciate you more if you demonstrate that you are interactive, that you are willing to converse, that you value what your audience has to say. As I noted before, a lot of the email marketing engines out there have built-in survey engines. And so it's often a great idea to send more than just a one-question poll, but a more detailed online survey to your email list, and then summarize the results on your website or in your next email. All sorts of opportunities to do that, and all sorts of ways that you can use a survey engine. And I could spend half an hour just talking about strategies and ideas for surveys, and I'd be happy to do that offline with anybody who has questions about that. And then, simply posting a question, even if it's not related to an article. So I work with Steve Smart, who is one of the partners at E4E, Experts for Entrepreneurs, and we on the website of the E4E community post a question, and we get a lot of responses. What's the greatest business challenge that you're currently facing this year? And just posting a question that's got context for your audience, but you don't even need an article to lead into it, and then publishing responses or responding directly with the people who offer feedback is just a great way to have that interaction and that conversation with your audience. All right. We all understand, Marketing 101, we all understand that follow-up sells. That very, very rarely do you make the sale on the first touch. And especially true with email, and especially true in the business-to-business environment. Nobody sells a higher-end consulting gig by simply sending out an email. Most of the time, there has to be multiple touches. So we understand that idea. But we also understand the idea that you don't want to shove down people's throats information or pitches that are not pertinent to their interests. Yogi Berra said, if people don't want to come to the ballpark, how are you going to stop them? I love that quote. If people don't want to come to the ballpark, how are you going to stop them? Well, basically what he's saying is if you are not interested in baseball, you can't convince somebody to just come to the ballpark. Somebody has to already have the desire, the interest in baseball in order for you to get them to the ballpark. If you're not interested in baseball, then you could send all sorts of buy one, get one free, we're giving away free bats or hats or bobblehead dolls, but those people aren't going to come to the ballpark. So the real trick in email marketing is how do you reconcile that need to follow up, to get that extra touch in front of your audience with the fact that a lot of people on your list might not be interested in what it is you're selling. And the more that you send messages about baseball tickets to people who are not interested in baseball, the more you're going to annoy them. How do you reconcile following up versus needing not to annoy people? And it's a real concern with email. The way you do it is by separating prospects from suspects. You want that follow-up to be something that is welcomed by the people who receive it. You don't want to be sending email that makes people think that you're a pest, that they don't welcome, that they don't want. And so the real trick is to use your email to identify the people who are interested in baseball and separate them from the people who are not interested in baseball. Here's a great example. This is an email that the St. Louis Zoo used, and it's a newsletter. So this is what you see on your screen is just a short piece of a newsletter that had lots and lots of information. So the strategy with the newsletter was send it to the broader list, include information on a variety of topics that would be of interest to everybody on the list, a little bit of everything for everybody, but also pay attention to who clicks the links. So using the tracking mechanism that the email software has, you know who clicked through to learn more about the animal wish list. And by paying attention to who clicked through on the animal wish list, they can identify the true prospects. And then, if they choose, they can send a follow-up email just to those people. Follow-up sells, but follow up only with the people who have identified themselves as true prospects. Separating prospects from suspects and then targeting is the real trick with email marketing and what separates the decent email marketing from especially effective email marketing. I got ahead of myself with the slide. Targeting your follow-ups is exactly what we were just talking about. Okay, and so now we'll move on. We'll talk about this idea of avoiding the silo mentality. I've really touched on it already, but the key idea with avoiding the silo mentality is that everything you do should be in the service of everything else that you do in your email marketing. So if you have a direct mail strategy, you need to be thinking about, how does my direct mail strategy work with my email marketing strategy? The two things are not separate initiatives. They are complementary initiatives. So, as an example, we work with a car dealership, and they have a program where they get a list of all of the people in a certain radius of the dealership who own that particular make of automobile. They get that mailing list from the manufacturer, and they send direct mail postcards with coupons for service. So the idea there is they want to draw people in who own that make of automobile to come and do service at their dealership, even if they didn't buy the automobile from that dealership. It's a fine strategy. When we sat down with the dealership, we said, are you doing anything to build your email list with that direct mail piece? And the answer was no. Well, it would be very, very simple. They're already committed to sending the postcard. They're already committed to drawing people in. It would be very, very simple to add just one line to that postcard that sends them to a web page where they can download an extra coupon, something not offered in the print postcard, something that adds another 5% off or 10% off to the oil change offer. Whatever the case may be, simply by saying, wow, you're already committing to sending out that print piece, now let's use the print piece to simultaneously build the email list so that people who don't necessarily come in and redeem the coupon that you've sent them might raise their hand and put their names on your email list. Same thing with newspaper advertisements. So many newspaper advertisements will promote your business, tell you where to go on the web, or tell you here's our website address, might even have a clippable coupon that you can get, but do they include a way for you, a call to action to raise your hand and join the email list? And it's a two-way street. In your email program, you might have a person's first name and email address, but do you have their mailing address? Well, you might want their mailing address or their telephone number, because yours might be a business where sending something to them in the mail, physical piece that they can handle, or doing a follow-up phone call may be the difference between turning that person from a warm prospect into a customer. So as you begin to build your email list and as you begin to define your email program, you need to look at what's involved in really closing the sale and what data can I collect and actions can I take to help that in terms of getting phone number or mailing address. And on the flip side, as you're doing other offline media, teleprospecting, newspaper advertising, direct mail, how can that work in conjunction with your email marketing program to have a coordinated marketing program that moves prospects through the sales funnel? All right. Focusing on your herd. Farming is better than hunting. Here's the idea. We have clients who come to us all the time and will say things like, help me buy a list, I need to get more leads in the door, and I understand that, and I don't blame them. Every business wants to get new customers. But here's the reality. Most businesses, most small businesses, have opportunities with their existing clients and even their lapsed clients that they are not taking advantage of. It is significantly less expensive to acquire $1 from somebody whom you already know, who has already bought from you, who already has some affinity for you and your business, than to go and find that person and get the same $1 out of somebody who has never heard of you and never done business with you before. That's not to say that lead acquisition finding new customers is something you should ignore. On the contrary, you need to do it. But that is to say that you should focus more than you probably do now on how to get more milk out of the herd that's already on the farm, so to speak. How can you increase the lifetime value of your existing customer relationships? How can you get them to buy more often, upsell them, cross-sell them into other products and services, and also of great importance, how to get them to become advocates for you and referral agents for you, which is an especially valuable and important thing on the internet, where they can post reviews and post comments about you, and will do so if you ask them to do it. So, a bonus tip not listed on our game plan: measure when practical and possible. One of the beauties of a lot of the interactive marketing that you can do today is that you can measure results. You can measure how many people open your email, how many people click through. You can track how somebody reached a certain sign-up form on your website. Was it via your email? Was it via search? Was it via a reference on a postcard that you sent out through direct mail? And because you are able to measure, you can really begin to look at whether the investment against a particular tactic has paid off. If you know that you acquired leads, people raise their hand through a particular technique, you can begin to measure how much did it cost for me to acquire that technique, because you know how much you spent for that direct mail campaign or for that email blast or whatever the case may be. And then you can begin to track how much it actually costs to acquire a customer through a particular technique. It's often easier said than done, but I think the important takeaway, if you're just getting started with email marketing, is to, as much as possible, pay attention to the metrics. How many people are opening your emails? How many people are clicking through? How many people are going from your email to that sign-up form or that buy the product page, whatever the case may be, and how many people are actually converting? And to the extent that you can begin to measure, you can begin to make much more educated judgments about what's working and what isn't, about where you should be putting more weight and where you should be divesting. So many small businesses will make marketing decisions based on a fixed budget. My marketing budget is X, and I will choose tactics that fit within that budget. When the right way to do it is really to say, my marketing budget starts at X. I will try to develop some measurable techniques within that initial budget. And if I can earn more than I invest, if I can measure the return on that initial investment, and that return on investment is positive, well, then I can turn the volume up a little bit. If X returns X plus 10, well, then do it again and double the volume and get 2x plus 20 or 4x plus 40. And the more you can measure the return, the better you'll be able to make judgments about how to increase revenue at a positive clip, as opposed to just sticking to a constrained marketing program and a marketing budget where you're limited ultimately to an arbitrary constraint. So measurement is very, very important, and it's far more possible than it used to be in the days when your marketing program was not practical, or excuse me, not measurable. So a few resources that I'll recommend. Number one, we have a free webinar. We run them every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and this is a webinar in which we demonstrate how our software works, but more importantly, we talk about some of the specific ways that you can do targeted follow-up and some of the tactics that we recommend to bring your email marketing to the next level. Whether you choose to work with MarketVolt in the future or not, you can get a lot out of that free webinar that will be instructive for your interactive marketing program. Second thing is we have an ebook called High Voltage Marketing. And if you go to marketvolt.com/book, you can fill out a form. You'll get an email link. You'll get an email back with a link to the PDF book. It has great tips, not just on email, but on a variety of subjects related to interactive marketing. Again, my contact information, tom@marketvolt.com, and my phone number, 529-1431. And on that note, I will unmute people, and I will see if anyone has any questions. So give me just a moment to find that button to unmute.
Tom, can you talk just for a minute about the difference between using an actual email service provider versus just using your own email client, whether it's Outlook or whatever? Can you talk about the importance of using an actual email service provider?
Absolutely. Yeah. So there are lots and lots of businesses out there, MarketVolt one among many, that allow you to create, deliver, and track broadcast emails. And these companies are typically web-based software, so you pay a fee to have access to the software, and you log in via the internet and store the database on their servers and so forth. And so you're paying, anywhere from 15, 20, 30 bucks a month or up for the service. And we hear a lot from businesses that say, well, I have Outlook, that's free. Well, the reason that you need to use an email service provider is, number one, if you do it yourself through Outlook or Gmail or something like that, you have no way to track. You have no way to know who opened, who clicked, who forwarded, and all of those advantages about segmenting, about separating prospects from suspects are virtually eliminated, and it's virtually impossible to do it if you use Outlook or do it yourself. Secondly, when you use a third-party provider, it's that provider's network that is the sending network. The email still will say that the email is from you, your name will be on it, your reply address will be on it, but it's MarketVolt or Constant Contact or one of the other providers that's actually maintaining the computers and maintaining the network from which the emails get sent. That's extremely important for a lot of reasons. One, because you don't have to maintain computers and have your IT folks worrying about are our computers powerful enough to send several hundred or several thousand or several tens of thousands of emails at one time. But more importantly than that, when you send commercial email, even if you've built your list as perfectly and ethically as you possibly can and everybody is double opted in, there are going to be spam filters out there that decide that you're sending spam. And you, if you're sending the emails from your own network, need to dedicate resources to monitoring that, to communicating with the Gmails and the Comcasts and the SBCs of the world to say, hey, we're okay, don't blacklist us, and if there is an issue, you follow up with it. If you're not prepared to do all of that, what will happen is that inadvertently, those providers will begin to say, oh, that network is sending spam, and I'm not going to let any email from that network come through any longer. And when that happens, not only is your monthly newsletter going to get blocked, but so too is the individual email from some key executive on your network to some key prospect going to get blocked if you're sending email from your own world. Take the sending of commercial email, the blasts, outside of your network and let experts handle it for you. That's the key reason, among many, that you want to look at a third-party provider. All right. Well, I greatly appreciate everybody spending some time with me today, and you have my contact information, so if you want to reach out to me after the presentation, please feel free to do so. I'm always happy to hear from people anytime and answer questions, and just please let me know if you have any questions or comments, and thank you again.